right, let's talk taking your Tesla up the Alcan Highway through Canada to Alaska. And I'm sorry I'm filming the mic with my headphones, but I am a nomad right now and I have a couple mics and none of them are with me. So this is what I got, and it doesn't seem like there's that many YouTube videos about doing this because I had some trouble finding the information, and I did it and would love to just give you some tips, tell you how the trip was, and hopefully help you with your own adventure up the highway. In short, very, very doable. I think it's intimidating, and I certainly had like a minor panic attack in the middle of the night at the last Tesla charging station when I realized, like, oh my god, am I going to have internet access to be able to access the app to be able to pay for the chargers along the way? And it was not necessary, the panic attack, as most of them are, and it ended up being just fine. And the truth is, you basically have superchargers up until a certain point. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I'll fill it in as I go through the different charging stops. And then past that, you're pretty much relying on Canada's like remote charging network, which actually worked incredibly well. A bunch of them are free, which is really, really nice. They range between like 25 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, 75 kilowatt chargers, so they're not going to be as fast as they are in the Tesla supercharger network, but they're doable. You do need an adapter, and I'll discuss what adapters are necessary and where you can get them for much cheaper than you can get them through Tesla. But it was really, really fine. Ultimately, like, the only real downside is you're planning in generally hour stops, so you're not moving as fast as if you were filling up with gas, but you're saving a lot of money, especially with the free chargers, which really is something that Canada has put in place because they want to encourage EV drivers and allow them to access remote places. And the road is freaking amazing. Like, I went to Yellowstone before on my way up, and the Alcan and driving through Canada was way cooler than that. We were seeing herds of bison walking on the road, on the side of the road. We saw elk, we saw grizzly, we saw brown bear, we saw caribou. And there's like some awesome stops along the way, including a sweet hot spring that you can go in, and it's like in the forest and really beautiful. And yeah, it was very easy. A couple just like important points that you should know before. You need the proper adapters. Most of the chargers have Wi-Fi because there is not good cell service throughout. If you want to be really safe, you can get RFID cards for the Tesla, for the Canadian chargers, which allow you to activate them without a cell service or Wi-Fi. But most of them actually have a Wi-Fi connection, and they're very good. We watched a movie on it when we were taking a break, connected to the Wi-Fi, charged, and we're watching a movie. And I didn't have any of the RFID cards, and I made it up just fine. But if you do want to play it safe, probably be a little bit more comfortable to have it. I think they cost like $5 to $10 through the app, and they mail it to your address. You just need to allow enough time to get those. But super important to have the adapters, because without those, you're just not going to be able to go through. We never had to do a slow charge. We did have a backup one that allowed us to both plug from just a normal wall outlet and also from like the faster RV park chargers, and we never needed to do that. The fast chargers were good enough for us, and we made it up. I think all in all, it took us about 6 days from the border of Canada to Alaska. We drove in long stretches. We made a little bed in the back of the Tesla, which was great, and switched off. But we also spent a couple days where we probably drove like 3 consecutive days straight, and we spent 3 days where we weren't driving at all. So it worked out well. Be careful out there. Obviously, the road conditions are, especially as you get more north, they're really, really rough. You get that permafrost where the ground is thawing and refreezing, and it adds this really rough, you get the crazy like dips all of a sudden, and you also get this washboard. So you can't go faster than 40 over them. And there were some parts where I was doing pretty extensive portions of the road going about 45, and you really want to be careful. They do a decent job like putting signs and like cones to show you where the bad dips are, but sometimes not. And if you're hit one of those going 60, like you're probably gonna bottom out, and it would not be pretty. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Hello. Hi, dude. So let's talk really what you need before setting off, and I'm just gonna look at my computer periodically because I have some notes on that. The adapter you need is a CCS1 adapter. It allows the Tesla to hook up to non-network superchargers, and it was actually the only adapter that I needed. I did have a couple others as backup, but that one worked just fine. And Tesla charges like $400 for it on their site, and I got one for 120 on Amazon, and it worked great. I'll drop the link in the description for the one I used. You can decide. I mean, there's a range of different ones. That one worked fine. You do need to like wiggle it around a little bit. They don't tell you quite how to do it, so it was like trying to figure out the best combination of like, do I plug in the adapter to the car and then the charger and then activate on the app, and then you have to like activate on the actual console. What I found was I would start the generator, which is a button, and you need to generally do that for the remote ones. And then I would hook the adapter up to the charger, plug it into the car, start the charge on the app, and sometimes you also have to press start on the machine. And sometimes it'd take me a few minutes to kind of figure it out and like play around, but don't get discouraged. It worked for me every time. Sometimes the adapter doesn't quite fit super well, but it would always work in the end. I also had a NEMA 1450 adapter that allows you to plug into an RV park. So you're not just doing like a slow trickle 3 miles an hour charge. I think you get 30 miles an hour on that. That was my backup. I thankfully never had to do that, but I probably recommend that you have that as well. Then in terms of apps, what you're going to need for the route planning, you should look at a better route planner, ABRP, and you can plug in your start, your end, and it literally tells you which chargers to go to. It's kind of like the Tesla in-app or in-car app that they use, but it works not only with Tesla apps. And then I would use PlugShare. I would look at all of those, and I'd see on PlugShare, you can see all of the possibilities and the reviews of people who have been recently, and they tell you whether it's working, and any other notes that you need, including like one guy who said that I saw the review, he was trying to do the Alcan in the winter. He said he got to the charger, it was negative 30 out, and it had been sapping his battery, and he was like, yeah, he's like, I got there, negative 30, like, probably should not have done this, 2% left. This charger probably saved my life. And the other apps, so you need BC Hydro, and I'll drop a link for that, and Flow, which is the two companies that operate these superchargers across BC and Northern Canada. And they worked fine. Like sometimes you do have to add, it's annoying, you have to add cash into the app from your credit card, and then you use the in-app cash. It is what it is. And those are the two, so BC Hydro and Flow. I would look at getting RFID cards for those before you drive, although I didn't have them. And then once you get to Alaska, you're using Recharge Alaska, which is an app, and that worked great. All of them were fine. It was very expensive once I hit Alaska. Like I think I spent like $25 on the charge in Alaska at Glen Allen, which was kind of annoying. And the supercharger too in Chugiak is quite expensive. That really is all the equipment that I had. Obviously, make sure you just have some backup water and backup food in your car. And depending on if you're doing this in the winter, it's a whole different ballgame. But you still probably want to have a sleeping bag and some sort of, some warm clothes in your car just in case. Cool. So let's talk route. We went up through Calgary. Obviously, if you go up through BC, you're going to have a little bit of a different route. We went from Calgary, and then the route cuts a little bit west of Edmonton. So we didn't have time to go to Jasper and Banff. If you are doing that, then I believe there are Tesla superchargers in there, and it's totally possible to do this route, but taking that detour. Up until Valley View, you're on the Tesla network. So Valley View, it's pretty much standard operating. And then at that point, the fun begins. So it's really recommended to look at PlugShare, and they have live reviews of people who've gone, so you can see, oh, if this charger's out, and which ones are working. There are quite a few chargers through this route, so uh, you know, I'm telling you the ones I stopped at, but I was also really playing it by ear. I never wanted to reach the final charger. Never wanted to have like 2% or 3% reaching a charger and no ability to reach another backup charger. So I always planned it that I had enough in case one charger was down. So I wasn't completely reliant on that, which sometimes meant like, stopping at 60, 70%, giving myself another 20% and then moving on. The reality is I never needed that safety room. It worked out smoothly for me the entire time. Um, all the chargers we went to were fine. We saw some that were out on PlugShare and we avoided those, and it worked out well. So we went from Valley View, we hit Dawson Creek, we charged there. Then we hit Fort St. John's. That's like a legit city. You've got Wi-Fi, everything, easy charging. We also, I think we charged up to 100%. There's a bunch in this stretch. So I ended up charging. I was nervous. This was the first time going through. So I didn't know if I'd have Wi-Fi. I didn't know if the Wi-Fi at the stations would work. So we stopped here. Obviously you can see all of these chargers either at ABRP or PlugShare. We charged up here. I also topped up a little bit at Pink Mountain. I think there was one at Prophet River. And then our next leg was Fort Nelson. So Fort St. John to Fort Nelson. Fort Nelson was also a legit town. They had good Wi-Fi, and we were able to charge no problem. At this point, kind of in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, Fort Nelson to Whitehorse is like the next stretch here. So this is probably like, this is where it starts to get really remote. And I just wanted to be very careful, but there are plenty of chargers. And as I said before, everything worked out well. We drove to Toad River and topped up, and then we went to Liard River. And there's a hot springs there. That's the one that I told you about. Absolutely gorgeous. You'll see, in the video here that it's well worth a stop. And I'm gonna make YouTube videos. I'm gonna make a YouTube video of this thing.
You know, just take all these voices of what we're saying. Like,
no, I'm gonna make them louder, and I'm gonna put your LinkedIn into it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. It's gonna be a good experience for us all around.
Yeah, and I think it will help other people be able to do this drive in an electric vehicle. And the lodge there has a charger. You do have to pay for it. I think all of the chargers in between Fort Nelson and Liard were free. All the ones that are operated by some sort of lodge are generally paid, but all the ones that are kind of in the middle of nowhere, like Toad River, and I think there's one at Summit Lake, those all were free. At that point, this is like this stretch between, let's say, Fort Nelson and Whitehorse is like the prime animal seeing area. And it's also, you got to be careful because there's a lot of animals on the road. Then we hit Lower Post, but really remote, nothing really there. Continued on, hit Teslin, also pretty remote. And then Whitehorse. And Whitehorse is a cool little town. There's a gorgeous river. There's a cultural center. There's some good food. We recharged there, charged up. It was a little hard to find a charging spot. We actually went, you'll see it on PlugShare. There's a Ford dealership that has a charger, and we had to pay for it, but it was fine, and we were able to get a charge. At that point, we drove to Haynes Junction. There was also a lot of animals, and the road was pretty bad through here. And then drove up past Klawani, which was gorgeous, gorgeous place, great place to like go off and explore if you want to. And then we went to Beaver Creek, and the road is pretty bad through here. At this point, we're like, great. This is probably the most sketchy part of the drive, just because you go up through the border crossing, and then you hit Tok, Alaska, and then the road comes down here. And assuming, depending where you're going, I was headed to Anchorage. Between Beaver Creek and Glen Allen, there are no fast chargers. So Tok, the only option there are a couple RV parks. They are used to having people come through and just posting up for a few hours, but they're like slow, normal. They're not wall chargers, but they're RV park chargers. So your 30 miles an hour type charge. And my backup, I was like, okay, like if need be, I'll charge in Tok, but I wanted to try to get to Glen Allen. And when I plugged in, we had 100% at Beaver Creek. I plugged it in and to Glen Allen, and the car told me that I'd have minus 11%. But it was actually very doable. First of all, the road is very rough, so I wasn't really going faster than 45, 55 the entire time, and it's pretty downhill. I actually made it to Glen Allen with, I think, 15, 16% left. And, I kind of monitored all the details and, to go to that energy screen on your Tesla to make sure that you're just seeing like what the consumption is. And I had all the climate control in the car turned off, and it was just like glide mode. And once I hit Tok, I was like, okay, like I saw the projections, and I was pretty confident with that. And at that point, I made the final decision to push through, and I reached Glen Allen just fine. It is 10:37 at night, and I'm trying to get from Beaver Creek to Glen Allen without stopping for a slow charge in Tok. And I started with minus 10%, and now we are up to 2%. And we're being told that if we stay below 49 miles an hour, we'll get there with 16% left. And I'm deciding, I have 35 miles to decide whether I push through or I stop for a level 2 charger and spend an hour getting an extra 10% or whatever. The reality is it's probably about the same, because if I was actually going 65 right now, I'd probably get there at the same time with that hour charge. But I like a challenge. Glen Allen's a fine charging place. And then at that point, kept driving down. And then right outside Anchorage, right about here, you're back on the Tesla supercharging network, and we charged and we got into Anchorage. That was the general route. Super cool, incredible country. I mean, you can just see the scale of how far you drive. I actually started in Nebraska, hit Colorado, came up through Montana. But coming from Calgary into Alaska was amazing. The border crossing was very, very easy. You just get such cool little experiences, especially as you're charging and you stop in at stores or cafes or restaurants, and it was phenomenal. So that's what I got for you on the route. Hope that helps. I don't think there's any reason to be nervous. There was plenty of chargers. I would get an RFID card, but it actually wasn't necessary. And make sure you have the proper apps, the proper charging equipment, and you should be good to go. That's really what I got for you. Drive safe. We definitely did night driving, but be careful of the animals, because we certainly saw them. I even saw a wolf on the road in the middle of the night, which was probably the coolest one. You can ask any questions in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. Incredible drive. Definitely doable in an EV. Really, really loved it. And I hope that you have a great adventure. If you have any questions, as I said, let me know.